Hello students, welcome to week 4 for COM308. This week we're looking at topics related to nonverbal communication and conversations within interpersonal communication contexts. If you look at the week 4 agenda, you'll see we're reading chapters 6 and 7. We're also watching a series of videos that all relate to the idea of conversations as well as nonverbal communication. So those TED Talks will help you understand that a little more deeply, as well as the other videos that are related to it. You also are completing your midterm, which is your communication improvement paper. So since week 1, you should have been tracking behavior that you were seeking to improve, and then moving forward with that into this week, you're now writing the paper to share with the class how you did improve that behavior or not. We're working on ICA number 3 as well as discussion board number 4. As you look at the midterm, what you'll be doing is in week 1, you did a self-reflection where you identified some interpersonal communication behaviors that you were looking to improve. So what you're going to do now is, since over the last 3 weeks, you should have started with that self-reflection and identifying the 2 interpersonal behaviors that you were looking to improve. And now in the midterm, you're going to take those journal notes and things of that nature and complete the following. You're going to identify the communication behaviors that you sought to improve, gather information about them from expert sources and such, and write a short paper that summarizes those particular behaviors, and then 2, share the log of your journal on what you found. The third thing you're going to do now is write a report of your observations and efforts into a paper and let me know what you've done to improve that, what improvement you may have seen or not have seen, and how you may have adapted or changed your behavior to work on improving those interpersonal goals you had. As you look through that, those are some things that you'll be doing within that. Once you get to number 4, you'll construct your paper looking at the following. So you're going to provide a brief introduction and rationale for your chosen behaviors that you observed. You're going to discuss your findings from the 3 academic sources you found about those observable behaviors and share the results within your introduction in the first couple pages of your paper. You're also going to share your observations, provide some examples of the behavior you observed in yourself and how that relates to the academic sources. It's share your successes and failures, as well as providing an overview of the improvements or non-improvements you made during this period in those communicative behaviors you were seeking to improve. Lastly, you're going to provide a reflection of the importance of self-reflecting on our communicative behaviors and lessons learned from the project, as well as how thinking Christianly and utilizing a Christian perspective could influence that as well. You will need to include a copy of your journal from the last 4 weeks. This can be scanned if you did handwritten notes, or it can be submitted as a Word document. And so I can take a look and see what your progress was throughout the time, and then I'm going to also read your paper. Your paper itself should be about 3 to 5 pages in APA format. If you have any questions, let me know. I look forward to interacting with you on that particular project. Discussion board number 4 asks you to look at 2 examples of nonverbal messages in action. One demonstrating how gender or culture may influence the use and interpretation of nonverbal cues, and the other demonstrating the role that media can play in nonverbal messaging. So what you're going to do is you're going to consider, after reading the chapter, a type of a nonverbal message or some type of nonverbal message you read about in the chapter, and you're going to look for 2 examples that identify it. One is you're looking to see how gender or culture can influence the interpretation of that particular nonverbal message you chose, and the other one, look at how media and technology could potentially influence that same nonverbal message you chose to examine. You're going to write at least 300 words on this. The original post is due Friday, with the reply post due on Sunday. Specifically in the text, pages 175 to 182 have the most information about these nonverbal messages, and then you're looking to see how they can identify within 2 different situations, one being gender or cultural influences, and the second one being the role that media and technology may play in this particular nonverbal message. And remember, that has 2 deadlines, as it is discussion board number 4. ICA number 3 is the same drill that we've done for the last couple weeks. Also, if you have noticed that your feedback hasn't been as you would like, or you haven't received it in time to finish your prior ICA and things of that nature, do not worry about that. I take into account the fact there is a week to get all grading done, and sometimes there are differences within that depending on faculty schedules and such that may go beyond that deadline. And so when you work on your ICAs, it's important to just keep working on it in the way that you've done. And if there's consistent errors along the way, and one of those happens to be because a grade wasn't turned around in ample time, you won't be penalized doubly for that, so you don't need to worry about that. ICA number 3 asks you to provide a summary description of the event. So again, you're choosing an either observed or mediated communicative event, such as watching television or film that shows some kind of interpersonal interaction, or actually observing it in real life. And now you're picking a new theory to look at to see how that may have been used. You're going to look at the application of that theory and write another 400 words about that interpersonal communication event analysis that you've observing to go from there. So it's the same as the first two. We're just folding it over now into our third activity. If you look at nonverbal communication, this is on page 153, you'll find that there are, that communication doesn't necessarily, we know this, include or just occur with you only using words. Messages can be expressed by non-linguistic means, meaning people's actions or attributes, including their use of objects, sounds, time, space, have socially shared significance and stimulate meaning in others. So specifically, nonverbal communication really focuses on expressed thought through non-linguistic means, so being void of speech. It's the actions or attributes of humans where there are significance and stimulating meanings in others by the particular nonverbal messages, either sent deliberately or accidentally. Their meaning often depends on how they're interpreted. So really we're looking at them fulfilling a meta-communicative function. And a meta-communicative function is communication about communication. So communication about communication, or clarifying both the nature of our relationship and meaning of verbal messages. And researchers tend to conclude that nonverbal cues carry approximately 2/3 of the message's communicative value. So if we think of the whole totality of a message of 100%, 2/3 of that, so we'll say 75% or so of that particular message is influenced by the nonverbal delivery and the nonverbal cues and messages that come with the actual verbal message. And that's important to keep in mind. Only 1/3 of what we actually say has as much meaning as what we do not say when we deliver those messages. Even when used independently of words, as long as observers can derive meaning from them, so these nonverbal messages, it can speak volumes in terms of the amount of information conveyed and the clarity in the reception of the message, or the perception of the receiver and the relationship you have with one another. So if you look at table 6.1 on page 153, there are 5 types of nonverbal communication. Contradicting is when you provide a nonverbal cue or a message that is contrary to what you are actually saying. So your face is contorted in the grimace, your eyes are narrowed, eyebrows are furrowed, and you look like you are yelling, "I'm not upset," is a contradicting nonverbal message. You're verbalizing that you're not upset, but your nonverbal language tells the receiver that you are. Emphasizing is used in a way that you are demonstrating some type of authority, and your behavior provides the italics. So you're raising your finger in an accusingly manner, you're yelling, "It's not my fault, it's your fault, not mine." You are trying to emphasize your message with a certain amount of meaning behind it. Regulating is used when you are trying to either diffuse or come to a conclusion with some type of message or interaction with another. You're after explaining your stance on an issue. You can raise and then lower your intonation to say, "And that's the way I feel, the way I do." Like you're trying to regulate the conversation to either, if you had some very high tension or high contentious moments in the conversation, and now you want to bring it back down to a non-contentious environment, you will be regulating it by changing the tone and interaction within your voice. Complimenting is where you your nonverbal cues provide clues to the relationship you and another person may share. And they may also help you convey your attitudes towards another. So the text gives us an example of looking about a boss and a subordinate. Your head is bowed, your body posture is slouched, and your boss tells you how unhappy she is with your performance. Your nonverbal cues provide the relationship you and your boss share. You have delivered your complementary nonverbal communication has shown that you are definitely in a situation where one communicator has power over another in that communicative action. Substituting is when you use nonverbal cues in place of words. So if somebody asks you how you like your job and you roll your eyes, or somebody says something that's, annoying to you, and you convey that without saying anything, and the receiver understands the message that you are trying to say without actually verbalizing something. So it's really important to keep that in mind. There also is points where double messages come in. That's when the message that is communicated when words say one thing but the nonverbal cues say another. It's very similar to the contradictory nature. So nonverbal cues can often contradict and negate verbal messages. When this happens, what is said and what is done are at odds. So it tends to be a double message, and it doesn't necessarily fit within the 5 functions we just went over, but that it does occur. If you look at in the chapter, one of the main theories that we go over, that Garner text Gamble, go over are Buehler and Burgeon's interpersonal deception theory. So this tends to happen when you may not, or you purposely choose not to tell the truth. So you choose to lie. It tells us that deception is a process based on 3 things: falsification, concealment, and equivocation. So it's telling us that we deceive people. Essentially, we lie because of 3 particular things. It says that deception happens for 3 main things. So an example of falsification is that you create some type of fiction to deceive the receiver of your message. So if you decide not to tell the truth, you could lie to your friend by telling him or her how excited you are to finally be able to see the movie, when in other words, you engage in falsification by creating some type of fictitious response because you have already seen the movie. So you're not lying, saying you haven't seen the movie, but you tell them that you're finally so excited to see the movie with them. That's some type of falsification. You're replacing your original feelings or the truth with some type of fiction to engage it. You could also say, I've changed my mind, let's see something else, or I heard that movie got bad reviews. That would be utilizing falsification in your deception to not just simply tell them, I already saw the movie. Instead, you're creating some type of false statement to go around the idea that instead of telling them the truth. You engage in concealment by keeping your friend from the real reason you may not want to go to the film. Or you could practice equivocation by changing the subject and dodging the issue altogether. All 3 responses, however, do involve deception. So Buehler and Burgeon believe that we make poor lie detectors. Many liars, it seems, strangely monitor and control their deceptive displays, giving us only 60% chance of really being able to identify when someone is lying to us. So our ability to spot deception depends on how suspicious we are with the person we're communicating. There's a number of things that we can utilize to consider this, but what really happens is that what Buehler and Burgeon has told us is that when we look at a liar, we look at deception. Deception is done only usually for 3 specific reasons. We're either changing the subject or dodging it through equivocation. We're concealing it by keeping or hiding information from somebody, or we're creating fiction to dodge the truth. So it's really important to keep some of those things in mind as we are looking at nonverbal messages and such, and when they apply and maybe do not apply in interpersonal communicative situations. So when we get into the conversation, it's important to know that we define a conversation really as some type of relatively informal social interaction in which the parties involved exchange the roles of the sender and hearer collaboratively and spontaneously. It's really participants determine a time frame. Conversation rules reveal the behaviors we prefer and would like to prohibit in various social situations. And we also learn about verbal and nonverbal messages and the structure of our relationships based off of that particular conversation. There are 5 stages to conversational structure. And so the first one is greeting. That's our phatic communication that opens the conversation, enables people to interact. It's our typical greeting where, hello, how are you? Nice to see you. And you start to let people know we are beginning a conversation. Topic priming is where we use communication channels to open, preview, and topic focus of communication. We either ask closed or open-ended questions to get dialogue going. 3 is where we're at the heart of the conversation, where we find a focus or goal of our conversation. We're getting to the heart of the matter. We're able to see why we opened the conversation, why we did our best to prepare for what comes next, and how good we are to the stages related to our conversational maintenance skills. So how well you are at being able to keep the conversation going. Number four, the fourth stage is the preliminary processing. This is where the flip side of topic priming. This is where we consider the effect our conversation may has had on those involved. We decide to alter our messages and modify content because we know the closing of the conversation is coming. We determine what we have learned and tend to recap some things that we may have said. And if we don't like the outcome of our conversation, we retrace our conversational steps to get us back to the beginning of the conversations to kind of retrace where we've gone to then enter closing. The fifth step, this is a reverse greeting of stage one. A good closing, according to theorist Mark Knapp, tells us it lets our other party know the conversation is nearing end and signals the impeding and accessibility of one party. So we begin to give some nonverbal cues and verbal cues to let people know that we're trying to close the conversation. And supportive in tone and contains expression of appreciation for the communicative interaction, desire to renew content, and it kind of summarizes some main topics that were discussed. We may merge some steps and stages for our preference depending on how formal this conversation is or may be. So to recap, we're reading chapter 6 and 7. You're watching some videos related to the course readings and course content. You're completing your midterm, ICA number 3, and discussion board number 4. If you have any questions, let me know. I look forward to interacting with you this week. God bless.